On the day of the wedding, Bronte Lancaster's childhood sweetheart burst into the church. He gripped his bleeding wrist, accusing, "Bronte, you swore you'd only ever marry me." With just one sentence, Bronte Lancaster destroyed the wedding I had spent a year planning. Despite my strong objections, she frowned and reproached me. "Crispin loves me deeply. Now he's threatening suicide. Can't you, as a grown man, just give way to him?" Later, I walked down the aisle with my new wife, giving up even the woman who had been by my side for 6 years. Yet she knelt, begging for my forgiveness. Ding! Story Shots reminds you to click the subscribe button at the bottom right corner to read the full novel. The officiant on the stage was passionately reciting the wedding vows. I smiled as I gazed at Bronte Lancaster. "Bride, please place the ring on the groom's finger," the officiant announced. As the words were spoken, Bronte carefully picked up the ring, smiling as she lifted my hand. I extended my hand, watching intently as she slowly slid the wedding band onto my ring finger. Despite my eager anticipation, the ring became stuck at the second knuckle. Bronte awkwardly gripped the ring, trying to force it down to the base of my finger. I frowned, growing increasingly perplexed. Suddenly, I recalled yesterday afternoon. Crispin Bromley, Bronte's first love, had posted on his social media feed. In the photo, he wore a dazzling wedding ring, his fingers intertwined with a pair of delicate hands. The caption read, "A promise from the past, a vow for this life." Upon closer inspection, the wedding band on his hand appeared identical to the one stuck on my ring finger, and those delicate hands looked remarkably like Bronte's. Just as I was about to question Bronte, a furious shout rang out, "I object to this marriage." A man in a suit burst into the room. He strode towards the altar, seemingly injured, his face ashen. With each step, a drop of blood fell to the floor. "Bronte, you said you'd only ever marry me," he declared. "Yesterday, you placed a wedding ring on my finger, promising to spend the rest of your life with me. Have you forgotten?" A sharp pain struck my heart. It seemed the ring on Crispin's hand yesterday was indeed my wedding band. A wedding ring is a testament to love, a lifelong promise. I felt nauseated, my eyes blazing with anger as I turned to Bronte beside me. She averted her gaze guiltily. Everything became clear to me. Yesterday, Bronte and I had an appointment with the wedding planner to finalize the details. She had been evasive, and after receiving a phone call, she claimed she had to deal with an urgent matter at work. The urgent matter, it appeared, was spending time with her first love on the eve of our wedding. I stared at Bronte in disbelief, my voice trembling as I demanded, "Explain yourself." Bronte glanced at the ring, then at the broken Crispin, before facing me without any trace of guilt. "Aubrey, Crispin suffers from severe depression. I'm the only one who can calm him down. I didn't really intend to marry him. I was just playing along. It's just a wedding ceremony. For my sake, can't you let him have this?" Without waiting for my consent, Bronte forcefully removed the ill-fitting ring and walked slowly towards Crispin, her eyes full of deep emotion. Out of Bronte's sight, Crispin flashed me a smug smile. Watching Bronte's resolute back, I shouted, "Bronte Lancaster, there are so many guests here. Are you sure you want to do this to me?" She turned back, her gaze contemptuous. "Aubrey, can't you see he's slit his wrists? Can't you prioritize?" I let out a scornful laugh. "So, the wedding I've been looking forward to for so long means nothing to you." My finger still ached slightly. Perhaps a ring that doesn't fit should never have been worn in the first place. When I first met Bronte, I knew she had an ex-boyfriend, the kind with whom she had sworn eternal love before parting ways. They were childhood sweethearts, attending the same high school and university. Later, Crispin wanted to study abroad, which led to their bitter separation. Unexpectedly, a year ago, Crispin suddenly returned to the country, claiming to suffer from severe depression and needing companionship for treatment. Having no relatives in Edinburgh, he contacted Bronte. Initially, Bronte was very cold towards him, holding my hand and declaring that she was spoken for. Later, when Crispin's condition worsened and he attempted suicide twice, Bronte sought my permission to take him to the hospital. Gradually, she stopped seeking my approval and began accompanying Crispin to hospital appointments on her own. On Crispin's birthday, she even stayed out all night without telling me, which set off alarm bells in my mind. I desperately tried to reassure myself that we had been together for 6 years and were about to get married. But I never imagined that at such a crucial moment, in front of so many guests, she would choose another groom. When did she start having these thoughts? And when did she fall back in love with Crispin, the man who had abandoned her? The warmth of the hall contrasted sharply with the chill that ran through my body. All around me, I felt the weight of scrutinizing, puzzled, and mocking gazes. The pain was as if 1,000 arrows had pierced my heart. I shouted again, desperately trying to salvage my humiliating wedding. "Bronte, this is our wedding." Bronte Lancaster's face finally flashed with annoyance. "Aubrey, that's enough. My affairs are none of your business." The impatience and irritation on her face stung my eyes deeply. She had always been ambitious. With my support, she had become a prominent female CEO in Edinburgh. The first thing Bronte did after her success was to fit 2 people in her heart, forcing me to understand her. A wave of exhaustion washed over me. I laughed bitterly. "Fine, it's your wedding, you decide. Why don't you just change the groom's name to Crispin Bromley? Would that make you happy?" Hearing my words, Bronte exploded with anger. "Aubrey Finch, you're being ridiculous. The moment things don't go your way, you want to hand me over to someone else? Fine, let's change it then." As if to spite me, Bronte actually sent someone to change my name to Crispin Bromley. Then, right in front of me, she brazenly took Crispin's hand and, lowering her head reverently, slipped the wedding ring I had dreamed of onto the ring finger of Crispin's right hand. The ring slid on smoothly, a perfect fit. Crispin hugged Bronte tightly. As they parted, he lowered his head, making a show of embracing and kissing his bride. Bronte tilted her head up, fully cooperating. The 2 kissed passionately in front of me, seemingly unable to part. After the kiss, Bronte's voice was full of affection. "Crispin, you're my groom now. Be brave, focus on your treatment, and live well." Suddenly, applause erupted in the hall. My mother, who had been hiding at the back of the hall to avoid causing me trouble, seemed to sense something was wrong. She was deaf and mute, and she rushed towards the stage, frantically waving her hands. My mother's face was contorted with rage as she tried to get onto the stage. Crispin's face paled with fear. Bronte protectively pulled him into her arms, signaling to her friends and family with her eyes. In the next moment, my mother was blocked by several of Bronte's mates, who roughly pushed her to the ground. Fury rose within me. "Bronte, stop this right now." I rushed over, shielding my mother in my arms. We both knelt on the ground, utterly humiliated. Meanwhile, on the stage, the officiant raised his voice in congratulations. "I now pronounce you husband and wife." My heart felt as if it had been ground to dust. I stood up, removed the groom's boutonniere from my chest, and hurled it onto the stage, roaring, "Congratulations on your wedding, Ms. Lancaster. We're through." My words made Bronte tremble for a moment. She quickly frowned at me. "Aubrey, what are you playing at? After all our years together, I've explained everything about Crispin to you. Can't you just—" If I hadn't maintained some semblance of reason, I might have struck her. I cut her off. "Bronte, shame on me for being so shallow that I can't appreciate your greatness." My sarcasm seemed like an apology to Bronte. Her face lit up. "I'm glad you understand. Crispin's health isn't good. It's only right that you step aside for him. After all, he knew me first. Once I've settled Crispin, I'll give you an even grander wedding." I looked at Bronte Lancaster with scorn. Suddenly, I felt somewhat relieved that we hadn't become true husband and wife yet. I was about to help my mum leave, but Bronte collapsed on the ground and didn't get up for a long time. When I lifted her face, I realized she had turned pale and fainted from anger. "Mom!" I hurriedly dialed 999. The ambulance came wailing, and I carried my mum into it. My aunt was anxious and followed us into the ambulance. She wiped her tears while angrily scolding me. "Aubrey Finch, didn't I tell you? Beautiful women like Bronte Lancaster would never be content. Look at this." She patted her chest furiously. "You've completely embarrassed us today. Look how upset you've made my sister." I disagreed. If anyone should be embarrassed, it's the mistress and Bronte Lancaster. "I didn't do anything wrong." "You!" My aunt pointed at me angrily. At this moment, my mum slowly opened her eyes and began to sign slowly. "Sister, don't blame my son." My aunt glared at me resentfully. My mum's gaze drifted towards me, her eyes full of self-blame as she continued to sign. "It's all my fault." I quickly wrapped her hands tightly in mine. "Mum, I'm not wrong, and you're certainly not at fault." As a deaf-mute person, she had raised me on her own, which was incredibly difficult. At the hospital, after a series of examinations, the doctor said my mum was fine, just suffering from unstable blood pressure due to emotional distress. But I was still worried and insisted on having my mum stay in the hospital for a week of observation. As night fell, I looked at my mum on the hospital bed, her pale face making my heart feel as if a piece had been carved out. I never imagined that Bronte Lancaster and I would come to this. We met through work. I wanted to give my mum a better life sooner, so I worked especially hard. That day, for a £100,000 project, I drank myself into a stupor. She was kind enough to send me home. I was grateful to her and invited her for a meal. When she learned I was from a single-parent family and my mother was deaf-mute, she often took care of us, coming to cook for us. In my ordinary life, this sudden warmth made my heart flutter. During our 6 years together, I fell deeper in love with her. But it seemed she no longer loved me. As I recalled those beautiful memories bit by bit, I gradually came to my senses. The sweet past was now just that, the past. But 6 years of feelings still made my eyes red, and I lowered my head. Suddenly, a clean, delicate hand appeared in my vision, carefully holding a pack of tissues. I looked up and met a pair of beautiful, gentle eyes. The strange woman bent down, holding out the tissues with one hand. I immediately felt embarrassed. I had almost forgotten that my mum's hospital room was shared. The pitiful sight of me, a grown man, sobbing and shedding tears, must have been fully visible to her. Seeing that I wasn't taking the tissues, she looked like a young girl still in school. After tossing the tissues into my lap, she obediently lay back in her own bed, covering her head with the blanket. I'm not sure if it was my imagination, but I thought her ears seemed a bit red. Glancing at her bedside, the name Elsie Dexter seemed familiar, yet I couldn't remember where I'd heard it before. I returned to the marital home I shared with Bronte Lancaster, packed all my belongings, bought a bouquet of flowers, and went back to the hospital. From afar, I could hear faint laughter coming from the hospital room. Opening the door, I saw Elsie Dexter acting like a professional caregiver, peeling an apple for my mum and even cutting it into little rabbit shapes. Noticing me, she said quite familiarly, "Don't worry, your mum is much better now. She really likes me." I'm not a very outgoing person. I didn't know how to respond for a moment. "Are these flowers for me?" she asked. I said softly, "Yes." She took them, exclaiming excitedly, "They're beautiful." In the past, I had bought many flowers for Bronte Lancaster, but she said I was wasting money. This woman called Elsie Dexter made me realize that a bouquet of flowers could indeed make someone happy. In a daze, I suddenly felt a sharp pain in my stomach. I hadn't eaten a bite since yesterday morning. "What's wrong?" Elsie Dexter put down the flowers and grabbed my wrist. She checked if I was injured, as intimately as a mother would. I caught her hand as she was about to unbutton my shirt, quickly explaining, "It's nothing serious. I'm just hungry." Half an hour later, in the hospital canteen, I stared at the food in front of me, enough for 3 days, stunned. She pushed a steaming bowl of beef stew towards me. "What's wrong? Are you lovesick over that cheating woman? Unable to eat or sleep? How do you know? She signed to me. It seems my mum had revealed quite a bit to this young girl. Elsie Dexter looked like a girl who hadn't even graduated yet, and I, a 28-year-old man, had my pride to maintain. I immediately shouted in embarrassment. Nonsense! How could that be? She smiled brightly. Then finished this bowl of beef stew to prove it. The result of trying to save face at the expense of comfort was that I ate too quickly. The spicy oil irritated my throat, and I started coughing continuously. Elsie Dexter quickly patted my back, helping me catch my breath. Suddenly, an angry voice sounded from behind. Aubrey Finch. I turned around to see Bronte Lancaster arm in arm with Crispin Bromley, glaring at me furiously. Following her hostile gaze, I realized that Elsie Dexter's hand was still on my neck, the touch soft yet burning hot like fire. Quickly shrank my neck. Bronte Lancaster let go of Crispin Bromley, walked towards me in her high heels, frowned and pushed Elsie Dexter away, scolding, "What are you two doing?" As if we had done something improper. Aubrey Finch, I came to the hospital specifically to check on Mum because I was worried, and this is how you treat me. Bronte Lancaster's tone was full of reproach. She even raised her hand as if to strike someone. I quickly stood up straight, positioning myself in front of Elsie Dexter, and angrily said, "Bronte Lancaster, you have the nerve to come here? If it weren't for you, would my mum be in hospital?" As I spoke, I glanced at Crispin Bromley, whose eyes were filled with obvious mockery. I said nonchalantly, "Didn't I give up the wedding to your unforgettable first love yesterday? Why aren't you busy with your wedding night and honeymoon instead of coming here to upset me?" Crispin Bromley composed himself and walked over with an apologetic expression. "Aubrey, it's all my fault. I caused your mother to be hospitalized and made you and Bronte argue. Please don't fight because of me. I shouldn't have come with Bronte to see your mother. I'll leave now." He said he would leave, but his feet seemed glued to the floor, showing no intention of moving. Elsie Dexter let out a soft humph. Anyone could see that Crispin Bromley was just putting on an act. Yet this act worked on Bronte Lancaster, who immediately said sympathetically, "Crispin, darling, no one blames you. The doctor said you need to stay positive. Otherwise you'll have trouble sleeping again." After comforting her first love, Bronte turned to me irritably. "Aubrey Finch, that's enough. What's the point of upsetting a patient in the hospital? There's really nothing between Crispin and me. I've already promised you a grander wedding. Why are you still acting like this? Your attitude towards me makes it easy for others to take advantage." She then looked warily at Elsie Dexter and said provocatively, "Aubrey Finch is my husband. Ask around about who Bronte Lancaster is. Who do you think you are?" Elsie Dexter sneered. "Bronte Lancaster, Miss Lancaster, I know you all too well. Rekindling an old flame with your first love at your wedding, yet expecting your fiancé to graciously give his blessing. You can cheat, but your ex-boyfriend can't find someone new? Such a shameless person. Who do you think you are?" The high and mighty Bronte Lancaster had never been confronted like this before. Her face immediately turned red as she retorted, "What happens between Aubrey Finch and me is none of your business." As if to assert her claim, she said softly, "I just heard you coughing. Are you feeling unwell somewhere? Let me take you to see a doctor." She then naturally reached out to take my arm, as she had always done before. Before I could brush off her hand, Crispin Bromley suddenly clutched his stomach, leaned against the wall and started dry heaving. Bronte Lancaster immediately ran back to Crispin's side, worriedly saying, "It's all my fault. You should be resting when you're ill, and I've been dragging you around. I'll take you to see a doctor right away." Bronte was about to leave but suddenly stopped. She glanced at Elsie Dexter, then explained to me, "Aubrey Finch, Crispin's condition can't wait. I'll take him to see a doctor first, but I'll be back to keep you company soon." Ever since Bronte Lancaster decided she couldn't be too heartless, Crispin Bromley had used various excuses like feeling unwell or having stomach aches to call her away countless times. In the past, I would always argue with her, trying to make it clear that I was her current boyfriend. She would accuse me of being crazy. Now, I just calmly said, if he's feeling that unwell, you should go with him to get checked out. Seeing that I wasn't arguing or making a fuss, Bronte Lancaster's face showed no joy, but rather a flash of panic. She hesitated, then asked gently, Aubrey Finch, are you all right? Just as she finished speaking, Crispin Bromley Dry heaved a few more times. His voice trembled. Bronte, I feel terrible. Bronte Lancaster no longer cared about my feelings and immediately supported Crispin, saying, Crispin, hang on. We'll go see a doctor right away. I watched Bronte Lancaster's hurried departing figure and Crispin Bromley's smug face of a successful scheme, feeling utterly calm inside. I no longer want Bronte Lancaster, nor do I care about the manipulative man by her side. These past few days, thanks to Elsie Dexter's companionship, my mum was discharged from the hospital after only 5 days. On the day of her discharge, my mum invited Elsie to come over for dinner. She was so excited her smile nearly reached her ears. Suddenly, Elsie asked me, Is that all right, Aubrey? For some reason, my heart started racing, and I instinctively declined her offer. After all, how could a young lady like her just enter a stranger's home? Not long after I brought Mum home, we had an unexpected visitor. I thought Bronte Lancaster and I were completely over after that day at the hospital. After all, I had moved all my belongings out of our marital home. Bronte was ringing the doorbell incessantly, carrying bags of shopping. The shrill sound annoyed even the neighbors, so I had no choice but to let her in. As soon as she entered, Bronte familiarly took her things to the kitchen. Mom, I bought you some fish. You need to build up your strength after being in hospital, she said, putting on an apron and starting to clean the fish. I tried to make her leave several times, but she pretended not to hear, constantly apologizing to Mum, admitting her mistakes, and asking about Mum's recovery. She even busied herself cooking 4 dishes and a soup. Back when Bronte and I were in love, she was always good to my mother. Now, Mum didn't feel right forcing her to leave. After all the food was on the table, Bronte hurriedly ladled a bowl of hot soup and handed it to my mum. Mum, I know I wasn't considerate enough at the wedding, but it was a matter of life and death. I had no choice. You know Crispin's health isn't good, and he's prone to depression. If he had done something drastic, wouldn't Aubrey feel guilty for the rest of his life? You don't know how Aubrey not only failed to understand, but even wanted to break up with me. To spite me, he's even gotten entangled with some tart. At this moment, I felt an overwhelming sense of helplessness. My mum is deaf and mute. She couldn't hear a word Bronte was saying. Bronte continued. That woman is only 22, still at university, but always getting out of fancy cars. She's clearly not respectable. Enough, I snapped. Bronte Lancaster, you were making eyes at another man at our wedding. What does that make you? Seeing my anger, Bronte quickly tried to placate me. Aubrey Finch, I was just jealous. Okay? She was hanging all over you. But look, now that you've explained, I'm not upset anymore. So put yourself in my shoes. Don't be cross with me over Crispin, all right? Aubrey, don't worry. You're the only one I want to spend my life with. Bronte had always been good at sweet-talking. That's why when she first went to Crispin's birthday party without my consent, I got furious and threatened to break up with her. She got drunk, walked in the rain, and even in her sleep, she was begging for my forgiveness. She swore I was her one true love, and Crispin was just a humanitarian concern to prevent his suicide. That day, she promised to consult me about everything in the future. But the result, time and again, when faced with a choice between me and Crispin, she chose her unforgettable first love. This time, I wouldn't soften my heart because of her pleas. I didn't get angry or lose my temper. I just calmly asked, Bronte Lancaster, do you really want to have another grand wedding for me? Thinking I had forgiven her, Bronte happily replied, Of course, it will be even grander and more magnificent than before. All right then, Bronte. If on the day of our new wedding, Crispin is unwell again, depressed and threatening suicide, what will you do? Without a moment's hesitation, Bronte said. Then we'll just wait until he's better to have the wedding. You wouldn't want to upset Crispin and risk him never recovering, would you? Once Crispin fully recovers, I'll be all yours. As she spoke, Bronte suddenly thought of something. Aubrey Finch, Crispin feels terribly guilty about the wedding incident, and his condition has worsened. I think if he feels better emotionally, he'll recover faster. I looked at Bronte, puzzled. Later, you should go explain everything to Crispin. Tell him it was just you being jealous, that it wasn't his fault. Let him focus on getting better. I stared at Bronte in disbelief. When had she become so delusional? Seeing my silence, Bronte lectured me. Aubrey Finch, I'm doing this for your own good. Once Crispin is better, won't I be able to marry you sooner? Although my mum couldn't hear what Bronte was saying, she could tell from my reaction that I must be very annoyed with her. Before I could act, my mum slammed down her cutlery and threw out all the bags Bronte had brought. Seeing my mum's chest heaving with anger, I forcefully pushed Bronte out the door. For once, I swore, "Get lost, you wretch." Bronte Lancaster had no idea of her mistake. As she struggled, she angrily said, "Aubrey Finch, you've become so rude after spending time with that floozy." Rubbish. Elsie Dexter was 1,000 times better than her. I sneered, "Bronte, if you weren't a woman, I'd be tempted to slap you." Bronte looked at me in disbelief. "Aubrey, you wouldn't dare hit me. Crispin adores me too much." Disgusted, I pushed Bronte a few more steps towards the door. "If Crispin Bromley loves you so much, go and live happily with him." Bronte stumbled, nearly falling to the ground. The neighbors, who had been quietly observing, looked at Bronte in surprise. "Isn't that Aubrey Finch's wife? What's going on?" My aunt, who had come to visit my mother, looked at Bronte with disdain. This woman is quite the schemer, unwilling to let go of her childhood sweetheart, yet not wanting to give up Aubrey. She then spat on the ground. A neighbor said angrily, "These days, the shameless rule the world. She even has the audacity to play the victim." Bronte's face turned pale and flushed alternately. I had always indulged her, and she had never experienced such humiliation before. She huffed, "Aubrey Finch, without me tolerating your jealous nature, who else would marry you?" Suddenly, a voice rang out, "I'll marry him." I looked at Elsie Dexter in shock. Her eyes were moist as she gently tugged at my sleeve, pouting, "Aubrey, darling, I'm ill. You can't abandon me or I'll relapse. I'm depressed. I might even threaten suicide." Looking at her pitiful expression, I suddenly remembered why her name seemed familiar. Years ago, during university, our psychology professor took us on a field trip to care for people with mental health issues. And she, Elsie Dexter, was the depressed patient I had cared for and accompanied for 3 years. Back then, she was still in secondary school like a gloomy little doll. I could hardly connect her to the cheerful young woman standing before me now. "Elsie?" She beamed like a sunflower, radiant in the slightest bit of attention. "Aubrey, darling, you finally remember me." She then looked at Bronte proudly. "If we're talking about who came first, I knew Aubrey long before you were even on the scene." "You!" Stung by Elsie's repeated jabs, Bronte's entire face turned red with anger. "Aubrey loves me. How could he possibly like you? Aubrey is just being nice to you because he's angry with me." Yes, I couldn't make promises to someone else just because I was momentarily upset. "Elsie, She immediately looked as pitiful as an abandoned kitten. "Aubrey, darling, don't you want me? Then I might as well die." With that, she actually pulled out a paper knife from her pocket and was about to cut her wrist. With a tear in the corner of her eye, she said in a heartbreaking voice, "Aubrey, darling, all right, put the knife down." Elsie immediately obediently put down the knife and threw herself into my arms. "Aubrey, darling, I knew you wouldn't abandon me. Will you marry me?" In a flash, she pulled out a men's diamond ring from her pocket. Bronte Lancaster finally started to panic. With a trembling voice, she said, "Aubrey, no, you said you only loved me." I smiled and mimicked Bronte's tone. But if I don't agree, she'll threaten suicide. Bronte, you're so understanding. You'll surely empathize with me, won't you? I lowered my head and looked at the pitiful woman standing in front of me. Suddenly, I remembered that on the day of my wedding to Bronte, I felt a melancholic gaze constantly upon me. When I turned to look, I couldn't find anyone. Was she there that day too? Is that why she happened to be in the same hospital ward as my mother? Even now, her threat of suicide is actually helping me out of a difficult situation. Elsie's actions drew admiration from the neighbors. Aubrey, this girl's not bad. Chasing after you so hard to marry you. Elsie looked proud. Of course, in this life, I only want Aubrey Finch. I felt a warmth in my heart. So this is what it feels like to be loved wholeheartedly. I unconsciously patted her head. Good girl. Elsie immediately grabbed my hand and slipped the ring onto my fourth finger. Now Aubrey darling is mine, and you can't two-time me. This time there was no piercing pain. The ring fit perfectly. Bronte's face turned deathly pale. At this moment, she perhaps finally understood my embarrassment that day. But it doesn't matter anymore. The next day, as I approached the office entrance, Crispin Bromley intercepted me. With an accusatory look, he demanded, Aubrey Finch, you've already got someone else. So why won't you leave Bronte alone? If you don't fancy her anymore, just say it. You can't have your cake and eat it too. I scoffed. He'd come to play the hero, hadn't he? Such a devoted couple indeed. Crispin Bromley, drop your little act. You're just after Bronte now that she's successful, aren't you? Trying to rekindle an old flame? Well, I'm stepping aside. So why don't you hurry up and marry her instead of coming here to annoy me? Crispin's expression changed instantly. Bronte marrying me is a certainty. Unlike some people who got jilted on their wedding day. It's clear as day who's truly in love and who isn't. Crispin looked at me with contempt. Bronte said you're rigid and boring. I know how to treat her better. I pretended to clean my ear. Finished. Seeing my indifference, Crispin nearly ground his teeth to dust. Suddenly, he cried out in pain and collapsed to the ground, clutching his stomach and curling up. I sneered, amateur. The next moment, Bronte Lancaster rushed over with a dark expression. Aubrey Finch, how can you be so cruel? Crispin's health is fragile, and you still laid hands on him. She then tenderly helped Crispin up. Crispin, darling, where does it hurt? Tell me quickly. Crispin winced in pain. I'm sorry. I only wanted to tell Aubrey that there's nothing between us and that he should cherish you. But then, Bronte flew into a rage, her eyes wide as if she wanted to devour me whole. Aubrey Finch, how could you hurt someone as kind as Crispin? I'm not afraid to tell you today. I love Crispin. You only disgust me. I looked at Bronte calmly, showing neither anger nor sadness. Fine then, if you love him so much, go ahead and marry him. Bronte looked at me with disdain. All right, you said it yourself. Don't come crying later. Whoever regrets it is a dog. Seeing the wild joy in Crispin's eyes, I smirked. I'd have a grand gift for them on their wedding day. A month later, I indeed received Bronte's wedding invitation. In the photo, Bronte nestled in Crispin's arms with a radiant smile. What a handsome couple, so intimately affectionate. The day before the wedding, Bronte sent me a message. Aubrey Finch, think it through carefully. It's not too late to change your mind. If I really go through with marrying Crispin, you'll never have another chance. I laughed coldly. How did I ever fall in love with such a shameless woman? On the wedding day, Elsie Dexter insisted on accompanying me. When Elsie and I entered the church, the bride and groom were still preparing. Around 11 o'clock, the ceremony officially began. Bronte Lancaster, dressed in an exquisite wedding gown, was escorted down the aisle by Crispin Bromley, both walking gracefully. Crispin gazed at Bronte with a face full of happiness. Bronte returned his look with tender affection. The same procedure, the same vows. The officiant began to introduce the couple's romantic love story. The two looked at each other lovingly. Then the big screen switched to display photos of them from their university days. I quietly stood up and went backstage. Moments later, the screen suddenly changed, showing two bodies entangled together. The man was Crispin Bromley, but there were many, many different women. The guests stared at the screen in shock, the venue falling into a deafening silence. After what seemed like an eternity, someone cursed, "Bloody hell, the groom's been quite the player." The crowd instantly erupted, with some laughing and others swearing. The officiant stood frozen, awkwardly scratching his head. Despite his silver tongue, he had no idea how to smooth over this scandalous video. Bronte finally snapped out of her daze and grabbed Crispin, slapping him twice across the face. "You said I was your only girlfriend, that there were never any other women." As the truth came to light, Crispin Bromley roared, "Who's behind this? Stop it immediately. I'll sue you." With bloodshot eyes, Bronte Lancaster straddled Crispin Bromley like a madwoman, slapping him hard across the face. She then forcefully yanked the wedding ring off his finger. "Do you even deserve to wear this ring?" she spat. Family and friends from both sides rushed onto the stage, quickly descending into a brawl. Eventually, the police arrived, followed by an ambulance. The incident soon became the talk of Edinburgh. Later, I heard that Bronte Lancaster had been taken into custody. That day, Crispin Bromley suffered 3 broken ribs. In a fit of rage, he pressed charges against Bronte Lancaster. In the end, Bronte Lancaster had to sell their marital home and pay Crispin Bromley £500,000 in compensation to avoid a prison sentence. By the time I heard this news, Elsie Dexter and I had already registered our marriage. She was still young, so I planned to hold the wedding ceremony once our relationship was more stable. As we left the register office, Bronte Lancaster came charging towards us like a lunatic. "Aubrey Finch, please marry me instead. Don't marry someone else." Elsie Dexter moved to stop her, but I gently pushed her aside and slowly walked up to Bronte Lancaster. "Bronte Lancaster, I'll say it once more. We broke up long ago." Bronte Lancaster fell to her knees, looking up at me pleadingly. "Aubrey Finch, I know I was wrong. I shouldn't have believed Crispin Bromley's lies and hurt you. I truly love you. I only pretended to marry him to make you jealous. We never actually registered our marriage. All these years, you've been the only one in my heart." I looked at Bronte Lancaster coldly. "Bronte Lancaster, how can you be so petty, obsessing over Crispin Bromley's past? He only slept with someone else once. The person he loves is still you. You should be more understanding." Bronte Lancaster opened her mouth, then closed it, finally retorting defensively, "I genuinely love you. I never intended to two-time anyone. I just got too emotionally invested and fell for his tricks." I continued to stare at Bronte Lancaster coldly. If she truly only loved me, how could she have ruined our wedding, leaving me to be ridiculed by a hall full of guests? If she was really so emotionally invested, she wouldn't have broken Crispin Bromley's ribs. She had always been selfish. She would never understand. All values in this world are equal. Only sincerity can be exchanged for sincerity. "Darling," Elsie Dexter called out sweetly, taking my hand. We smiled at each other and walked towards the future, bathed in light. The one who truly loves you needs no words. They'll always stand by your side.